Hey, what's up everybody? It's Luke here from Lifehouse, and just want to give Lifehouse College another shout out. If you haven't registered yet, this month you can still register for college, so get on that. The link is below. Join us. We've got like 300 students in college now. Big community online, lots of people, lots of single people. So you jump on there, you could find the love of your life and also learn a whole bunch of amazing studies. So it's going to be incredible. Tonight we are going to look at a finance series. We're going to be talking about financial freedom, and this series is seriously one of the things that could really have a big impact on your life. We're going to learn about what God says about finance. So get ready to take some notes. Seriously, tune into this because it's going to be incredible, life-changing. So here we go right now. Let's talk about financial freedom.
Well, hey everybody, and welcome to 7 Steps to Financial Freedom. My name's Josh. I'm one of the pastors here at Lifehouse, and I tell you what, we're just so excited about helping you get better in your finances and getting to a place of incredible generosity and financial freedom. And so glad that you've started this course together with us. Now we're going to spend the next 8 sessions together, and I believe these sessions are some of the things that you're going to look back on in your life as a pivotal moment in your finances, in the way that you think about money, and in fact, in the way that you live your life. And so we're going to kick things off today with an introduction to 7 steps to financial freedom. You know, Dave Ramsey says, live like no one else now so that later you can live and give like no one else. And I want to tell you now that we want to live a blessed life. But you know, mate, you may not realize it, but if you are listening to my voice right now or watching this video, you are in fact blessed. Just by living here in Japan, where we're recording this, the average salary in Japan at just over 3 million yen puts us in the top 1% of wealthiest people in the world. That's about $30,000. So wherever you're watching this, if your salary is above $30,000 a year, that actually puts you in the top 1% of wealthiest people in the world as well. And you may say, but I don't feel that blessed. Well, actually you are. 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 2, it says, it is required that those who have been given a trust must prove faithful. And what do you think that means when we've been given a trust? Well, it means that God has blessed us with something and he expects us to do well with what we have. In fact, many times throughout the Bible, and even Jesus says this, that as we do well with what God has given us, God will give us more to steward for him. You see, what we have is not just, limited to what we have, but as we do well with what we have, God sees that. His blessing is upon it. He smiles upon us. And of course, he wants to bless those who are going to do well with what he gave them. Matthew 25:23, Jesus tells a story, and his master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share in your master's happiness. And right from the start, right from the outset of financial freedom, I want to ask you a question. Are you being faithful with what God has given you? Are you being faithful with what God has given you? And honestly, if you looked at your life, you'd probably say, maybe I could do a little better with what God has given me. Financial freedom. Financial freedom is being free from anything that might be holding us back from living the blessed life that God has for us. For many people, this means freedom from debt, freedom from stress about worry, or freedom from bad decisions, or even a family history of bad decisions. And this course is not a get-rich-quick scheme. In fact, it may be a get-rich over time or build wealth over time scheme. But you need to know that the Bible talks a lot about money. In fact, in the New Testament, Jesus offers more wisdom and has more to say about money than any other subject besides the kingdom of God. To me, this shows how important finances are to God. I believe in our lives, if we can do well in the financial area of our life, it means we can do well in many areas of our life. Luke chapter 14, verse 28, it talks about budgeting and planning. It says, suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? Proverbs 21 verse 5 talks about budgeting and planning. It says, the plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty. Debt, the Bible talks about debt. Proverbs 22 verse 7 says, the rich rule over the poor and the borrower is slave to the lender. The Bible talks about relationships. 2 Corinthians 6:14, it says, don't be yoked together with unbelievers, for what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with darkness? It's saying, hey, you got to choose your business relationships carefully. You got to choose relationships in your life carefully. The Bible, of course, talks about saving. Proverbs 21:20 says, the wise store up choice food and oil, but fools gulp theirs down. Do you want to be wise or do you want to be fool? It's not a difficult question today. Matthew 25:19-21 talks about investing. It says, after a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5, and he said, Master, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I've gained 5 more. And his master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come, share in your master's happiness. And so the Bible talks about that. God, money is not there just to sit for us, but we need to actually not just work for money, but we need to make that money work for us. And Jesus himself is actually talking about investing that money so that we get a return on what God has originally given us. The Bible, of course, talks about giving. 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 7, it says, each of you should give what you've decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And of course, we love Proverbs chapter 3, 9 and 10, where it talks about tithing. It says, honor God with your wealth, with the first fruits, the first part of your crops, then your barns will be filled to overflowing and your vats will brim over with new wine. And tithing really is the key to getting all of this started. And God says, as we put God first in our finance, that he wants to provide for all of our needs. That's our barn, that's our food and our shelter, but also our vats will brim over with new wine. And the wine, it's talking about joy, it's talking about celebration. And I believe that links to John 10:10. Jesus says, I want to give you a full life, an exciting life, not a stingy life, but a generous life. And so you can see here, there's a framework that the Bible talks about all of these areas. And so what we've done is we've condensed this down, and that this is based off Dave Ramsey's teaching, who's an amazing teacher in America, Bible teacher, talking about finance and saving and investing. I recommend go and have a look at his YouTube or his podcast or any of his books. But the following steps, the 7 steps to financial freedom, are Bible-based common sense for your finances. And in the world today, we know that common sense sometimes is not so common. As I said, these steps are not a get rich quick scheme, but they're building God's wealth. They're building wealth God's way. And you may say, well, I don't agree with these steps, or I want to skip these steps. That's okay. You don't have the microphone today. I've got the microphone. And so these are our steps. And we've seen a lot of fruit over the years as people follow these steps and get God's planning for their finances that just brings them so much freedom, less stress, and start to live in the blessed life that God has for them. So here we go. Number 1, step 1 is get a plan for your money. And we're going to call this a budget. So we need to be budgeting each month. How long does this take? Well, you can do this in today or less than a week. Step 2, we're going to look at saving a beginner emergency fund and the different insurances and things that we need to live a safe life. And maybe this is going to take you about 1 month to get this into action. Step 3 is getting out of debt. We know that the borrower is slave to the lender. Now, this may take a while depending on how much debt you have. But it can take up to 2 years, we see in most cases. Now, this is everything except your house. Step 4 is saving a full 3 to 6 month emergency fund. And average timeline, this can be done in about 6 months. Step 5 is, this is where it gets exciting, I think, is investing for the future. And this is something we're going to do for the rest of our lives. We're going to continue to invest for the future. Step 6 is stewarding God's blessing. And this is talking about not just investing, but doing well. How do we deal with some of the bigger things in life? A house, an apartment, cars, these things. And step 7 is build wealth, be incredibly generous, and leave a legacy. And how long does this take? Well, this starts after step 6. And this is where we want to get to. We want to get to step 7, be building wealth, be incredibly generous, and leave a legacy to our children's children. So that's a bit of an overview this week, a bit of an introduction to 7 steps to financial freedom. Hey, I hope you're excited. If you're going through this with one of our amazing coaches or through a Connect group or through a course, make sure you ask any questions you may have at this time. But let's get ready to be learning these 7 steps. And I believe that they're going to help you a lot. These are some of the lessons that I wish I had learned when I was a young person. And so no matter what age, what stage you are, it's always the right time to start doing finances God's way. So God bless, and we'll see you at the next session. Have an awesome week. Well, hey there, and welcome to step 1 of 7 steps to financial freedom. My name's Josh. I'm one of the pastors here at Lifehouse, and we're just so excited about helping you win with money. Step 1, this may be the most important step, is get a plan for your money. This is the dreaded B word, budget. You need to budget each month. John Maxwell says a budget is telling your money where to go, not wondering where it went. And you may say, I don't know if I need a budget. Well, have you ever had too much month left over at the end of your money? It may take a moment to sink in. Maybe you've had a fight with your husband or wife because you didn't agree what you should spend your money on. Is that, if you be honest here, maybe there's some people out there. Or maybe you felt that you didn't have enough money to do the things that you would like. You didn't have enough money to maybe purchase that item or buy that car or build that house or be generous to those people in need. You just thought, if I just had more money. You need a budget. If you've answered any of those questions, you need a budget. Zig Ziglar, motivational speaker and author, says, if you aim at nothing, don't worry, you'll hit it every time. And all a budget is, all a plan for your money is getting some tracks for your money, telling your money where to go. Remember, if you don't tell it where to go, it's going to run away. And so let's not have a nothing budget, because we'll just go around in circles our whole life. And you may not realize it, but budgeting actually brings freedom into our life. You see, a budget doesn't decide our spending. No, we decide the budget, and then that decides where we spend. If your budget is too tight, it's because you're too tight. You set the budget. If your budget is too generous or too loose, you set the guardrails of the budget. You decide the boundaries, and you spend freely up to those boundaries. So instead of worrying about spending too much or wondering how you can buy something, you're actually free to spend up to what you've previously decided. For us, this was actually freeing when Yuki and I, my wife, when we were married and we were deciding how to spend our money and budgeting. At first, it seemed like this is going to be restricting. We just want to live a free life. But after a while, when you get a budget and you get used to the budget and you set the guardrails of the budget, it actually is freeing, because you're like, well, I can allocate this money for food and allocate this money for clothes and allocate this money for shopping or eating or giving. And then instead of feeling guilty when you go shopping, instead of thinking, I don't know if I should tell my husband or wife this. No, you are free to spend up to the budget that you've decided together with your husband and wife. Proverbs 21 verse 5 says, the plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty. And Proverbs is so wise. It says, as you plan out, it's actually going to lead to good things. It doesn't mean that everything is easy overnight, but over time, the plan leads to good things. Proverbs 3 verse 9 and 10 says, honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of your crops, and your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine. And obviously, starting our budget and the cornerstone, the very initial thing of our budget, is going to be putting God first and say, God, This whole budget this month, God, all the things that we're going to use our money on, we're going to do this to honor you first and foremost. And Jesus himself, he says in Luke 14:28, he says, suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Won't you first sit down and estimate the cost to see if you have enough money to complete it? What does Jesus say about planning our money? Well, he says, if you want to do something big, if you want to have a big project, if you want to have a big life, well, you need to sit down and you need to spend your money on paper before you start building anything. Too many people get ahead of themselves and start spending stuff and doing things, and they didn't actually sit down and work out, could it be done or how much it's going to cost? A budget meeting. This is a big one. If you take anything away from today's lesson, you need to have a budget meeting. So every month, as you get paid, have a budget meeting with your husband and wife and spend all of your money on paper. Spend all of your money on paper before you actually touch the bank. And you may say, well, I'm not married. Who do I do that? Well, if you're not married, sit down in a chair, get out your budget spreadsheet, put a teddy bear in the other chair and have a budget meeting with a teddy bear. What you need to do is give every dollar a name and you need to tell it where to go. Remember, if you don't tell it where to go, it's going to develop wings and it's going to run away. And there should be nothing left over. In fact, everything should be allocated. Remember, we're going to spend all of our money, but we're going to spend it on paper before we do anything in real life. And this is called zero-based budgeting. It means at the end of it, if you did it correctly, the end total, the end sum should be zero because you've put everything there and savings here and miscellaneous spending here and food here and tithing here. And remember, you need to stick to the budget, and any changes you need to discuss with your husband or wife first. And I would recommend for the first budget or for the first few budgets, when you make that budget, you and your husband or wife or you and your teddy bear, whoever that is, you should sign the budget. And if you spend outside of those budget categories, you need to get permission from your husband or wife or from your teddy bear to spend outside of that category. This is your binding word. And then, of course, over time, it doesn't need to be so strict like that. But you need to understand, hey, these are our categories that we are going to set. And so what does a sample budget look like? Well, right at the top, you write down your income from your work or your regular job. And then you can also, there's a space for other income, and you have your total income. This is 100% of your budget. Then, of course, you're going to list out some of your, let's call these overflow categories. So these are your tithes, 10%. Of course, we're going to give that to God first. We're going to do this before we spend anything else. We're going to invest. I would recommend 15% if you can. We're going to save. I would recommend 5%. This is money that we keep on hand for projects that require cash or require savings. If you got kids, we're going to give some money, maybe 5% to kids, college, investing for that. And maybe if you like, we can give some money for extra giving, 2.5% or 5% or more if you can. But this is money towards extra giving projects, maybe buying dinner for someone in need, or supporting our school, Tejas Asia in India, or maybe supporting the kids in Watoto, Africa, or needs, or typhoon victims, or earthquake victims as they come up. It's good to have some extra money on hand that we can use for giving. And so that's going to come to roughly 40% of our budget, give or take. Then we have our needs. These are things like housing. How much should you spend on rent or your mortgage? I would recommend no more than 25% if you can. If you're spending more than 25% on your housing, some of these other areas like college or savings or investing are going to suffer because maybe your house or your rent is more than it should be, proportionally is in terms of your income. Utilities, gas, water, these types of things, maybe about 10%, depends where you live. And food, of course, maybe that's going to be 10% of your budget. Now, you may say, food, 10% of my budget. That's not enough money. And it may not be if you have a family. But most people, you don't need to spend a lot of money on food if you are buying your food at a supermarket or at a grocery store. Most people need more money for food if they're eating out all the time. Now, that's one of the biggest areas you can look at. And so that's maybe going to be about 40%. So we're up to 85%. Then, of course, we've got eating out money. I don't know how much you eat out. I used to eat out a lot. And then I realized, hang on, if I took some of that money and we saved it or invested it, that's actually quite a lot of money. And so we stopped eating out as much and got a lot healthier as well, because now we can buy great food and we can make great dinner together and have some extras and drinks and things. And it's actually a better experience for our family as well. But of course, we still do eat out sometimes as well. And then miscellaneous, maybe 2.5%. There's some things. These are extra things. We can cut these in a tough time. That's going to be about 5% our budget. And then, of course, we've got things like life insurance. Maybe that's about 2.5%. We've got health insurance. Maybe that's another 5%. We got our pension. Maybe that's another 2.5%. So our total insurance is maybe going to be about 10% of our budget. And so all of that income minus our overflow, which is our giving and our needs and our wants and our insurances, all of that should equal 0. Now you may say, well, those percentages don't work for me. That's fine. This is just a rough guide. The main thing is that you write down your income at the top of the page, and then in order of priority, you write down your tithing and your giving and your saving and investing and housing and utilities and food and eating out and miscellaneous and insurance. And you write all of that down. If there's money left over, well, I would recommend put it back into savings or put it back into investing or put it back into giving. And if you've got a negative, and many people, when they do this, they don't realize it, but they're like, oh, that's why I never have any money, because I'm actually got a negative every month. If you've got a negative, you need to look at that and you need to make your budget work. Now, initially, maybe you can't invest 15%. Maybe you can't give extra giving at the moment. Maybe you need to wait until you move house or do something or increase your income with a side hustle. So this is not set in stone, but we do need to look at it. And if you've got a negative, then you've got a problem. And of course, we're going to tithe all the time, no matter what. Tithing, it's a mandatory. We have to, not because God requires it, because we want to honor God. We want to put God number one. For me, this is a non-negotiable when I say that. And I want to encourage you to also have that as a non-negotiable in your life, putting God first. But investing and saving these things, I put those at the front end. Because as we put those at the front end, if we put them at the end, we never have enough money to save. We just say, I won't save anything this month. But if you do that, you'll find that every month, you'll never save anything because you didn't make it a priority. So put it at the start. It might hurt, but you're going to make everything else work. So put your tithing, put your giving, put your investing, put your kids' college, put all that at the start, then put your needs, and try and work your budget out from there. Of course, if you've got any questions with your budget, if you're doing this as part of our course or one of our Connect groups, talk with your coach and say, hey, can you help me make this work? And often someone else can look at our budget and say, hey, you're spending too much money. Usually it's on takeout food. Sometimes it's on other things like clothes or different things like that. But hey, let's make our budget work every month. So looking forward to hearing your stories about your budget meeting with your husband or wife. Sit down, or maybe with your teddy bear, write in if you've got a good story. But let's try it out this month. Step 1, get a plan for our money, budget, tell your money where to go, and don't wonder where it went. Well, have a great week, guys. And hope you enjoyed step 1 of financial freedom. And we'll see you next session for step 2 of financial freedom. Well, hey, everybody, and welcome to step 2 of financial freedom, saving a beginner emergency fund. And if you're joining us for the first time, my name is Josh, one of the pastors here at Lifehouse, and we're just so excited about helping you win with money. Saving a beginner emergency fund, step 2. What is a beginner emergency fund? Well, this is where we recommend in step 2, after making a budget, planning out your finances, step 2 is setting aside about $1,000 for a rainy day fund. Now, this is a fund that's going to take care of most emergencies as they come up. Maybe your car gets a hole in the tire, or your bicycle breaks, or your phone breaks, you lose a phone, or something happens. Instead of going into debt, instead of spending money on your credit card, instead of going into mother-in-law debt, or instead of asking your parents for money, or borrowing against something, you have enough money to cover a minor expense. And we find that this beginner emergency fund Covers, maybe 95% of most emergencies. Most emergencies are not bigger than this. Now, there are going to be some emergencies bigger than this, and we're going to look at that in the next steps. But this is a fund just to cover those little things that come up in life as we're going through and getting out of debt. And I want to encourage you, put this somewhere that you can't access easily, so that you won't be tempted to spend it, on a holiday or that iPhone. So you put this in an account maybe that doesn't have internet banking or maybe doesn't have a card attached, because if easily accessible, it's easily spendable. So put it somewhere. Don't put it under your bed, of course. You may lose it. Now, Proverbs 21:20 says, "The wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down." I want to ask you, what do wise people do with their money in a good season? Well, Proverbs 21:20 says they store up food and olive oil. So in a good season, it's good to go ahead. It's good to have margin, and it's good to store up for a rainy season. I want to ask you today, maybe you're listening or watching, do you need plastic surgery? You may say, what? What are you talking about? I thought this was a financial freedom course. Yes, I'm talking about spending money on plastic. Maybe you've got trouble. You spend too much on your credit card or on your debit card. Maybe you need some surgery. You need to cut them up. Do you need plastic surgery? I would recommend, if you have trouble spending on a credit card, you need to switch to a debit card. And this is where the money comes directly from your bank account. This also helps with budgeting, and you can actually spend the money that you have. With a credit card, you can see the money that you've spent, but it's like looking in the rear vision mirror. You don't have a good, accurate perception on where you're going, especially if you're just getting started. But you may say, but what about the points, my credit card points? Well, oftentimes stores and companies, they have a point system, but they're just trying to get you to spend more money at the store. You need to see it for what it is. Be wise, live on the money that you have in the bank, not on what you can repay in the future. And, speaking with different wealthy people and people who are doing well in business in different areas of their life, I've never heard a wealthy person saying, see this beautiful house and car and family and all of this wealth I have. See all of this wealth. It's all because of credit card points. I've never heard anyone say that. And so let's not live our life a point system or plastic or anything like that. Maybe we need some plastic surgery if you've got too many cards or different things, and live on your own money. Don't live on other people's money. Plastic versus cash. We live in an increasingly cashless society. And of course, we're not going to try and fight that. It's useful and it saves us time. But we need to know that a study by Dun & Bradstreet, they found that people spend 12 to 18% more when using credit cards instead of cash. And actually, McDonald's has said that its average ticket is $7 when people use cards versus $4.50 for cash. And so all of this, use your phone, use your card, just pay here, pay there. You don't feel anything. And so you actually spend more money than if you had to get that coin out of your pocket. Now, I'm not advocating that we need to go back to cash and hold on to cash, but we do need to realize that it's easier to spend money than ever. And that's why a budget is so important, because even if we're spending on plastic or on our phones or different contactless ways of spending, we need to have a limit to how much we're spending. But there is a heart connection. When we spend cash, something physical, it actually connects to our heart, connects to our bank. When we spend something on a debit card, we do feel that because we know the money's coming out of our bank. When we spend money on a credit card, it's almost like we don't feel it because we spend it, but it doesn't come out of our bank immediately, but you will feel it the next month when it comes out of your bank. And so let's be wise with that. Maybe you need some plastic surgery if you've got too much plastic in your life. So saving up a beginner emergency fund. So let's go ahead. Let's save up that $1,000 initially. Some other things we want to get into practice in this step is life insurance. Big question. People often talk about life insurance. Now, life insurance is a wise thing to take out. This supports anyone that relies on your income, for example, your spouse or your kids, in the case of your death. Whoa, we don't want to think about that. But when you die, if you've got people that depend on your income, they need money so that they can live because they don't have you to make an income anymore. So what we need to do, a recommended amount, is to take out insurance that's equal to 12 times the income that is needed each year. So for example, if our family needs $100,000 per year, we should take out insurance 12 times that. That would actually be $1.2 million of insurance. That would be a lot. But this means that in the case of someone dying and their family needed $100,000, they could invest that money, $1.2 million, and that could be invested, and up to 8% could be drawn out each year to live on, leaving a buffer for the investment of 4% to grow and also account for inflation. Now that's assuming that over average, as the average mutual funds, we're going to look at that in a later step, don't worry, are making an average of 12% per year. So the money is continuing to grow at 12%. You're taking out 8%, which would be $96,000 per year to live on. There's 2% maybe accounting for inflation, and there's a 2% buffer in case there's some down years or some up years there. Now you may say, but I have a pension. Well, in most cases, a government pension will not cover a family's needs. And depending what countries you're in, there is social insurance and different things, but it's usually in the realm of, say, $1,000 a month or $1,500 a month, which is usually less than what a family needs. And so don't leave your family in debt, or don't leave your family struggling if you happen to pass away. And sometimes I know families that this has happened to them. We don't want to live like that. No, let's live comfortably. Let's live with margin. And if the worst thing does happen, that we know our families are taken care of because they have this lump sum. They're not going to spend it. They're going to invest it, but they're going to draw out 8% every year that they're going to live on and have the same income that they have had. All right, different types of insurance. There's term life insurance and there's whole life insurance, the two main life insurances. Term life insurance is the most simple and inexpensive way of life insurance. It's easily available. You don't need a broker. You don't need a salesperson. You just go online and you just sign up. The cost is approximately $10 per $100,000 of insurance. So it's relatively inexpensive. So for $100,000 of insurance, that would be $10 per month. For $1 million of insurance, that would be $100 per month. The term means that over the term, maybe that's 20 years or 30 years, that the price doesn't change. It doesn't go up as you get older. It actually just stays the same. So depending on how old you are when you start will determine your rate. How long should the term be? Well, in most cases, it should cover your kids growing up and going to college. So for example, if your child is 1 year old right now, you might want to get 20 years of term life insurance, which means you are paying insurance for 20 years. And then if you happen to pass away in 20 years, well, in 20 years, your kid is grown up, they're in college, they're good to go. And you've been saving, investing, and so your spouse doesn't need the insurance and your children don't need the insurance. So 20 years is fine. So that's the term of it. About 20 years is recommended, but you need to time that so when your children don't need it anymore. Whole life insurance, this is another type of insurance. This is a package of life insurance, savings, healthcare, all kind of mixed into one, and a generous commission to the sales agent that sold it to you. It's usually sold in person, perhaps even door to door, has very large commissions. Up to half of the policy that you're paying is actually going to pay the salesperson or the middleman or the company. And it's much, much more expensive. I mean, it may be thousands of dollars per month. And so we would recommend get your insurance with an insurance company. Do your investing with an investing company, do your savings with a bank company. You don't need to combine them all together and pay a premium for that. No, get some term life insurance. It's very simple. Do the research for yourself or ask your coach if you're going through this in a course or a connect group. But don't, do your homework first. So have a look at that. So personally, we have term life insurance. For 20 years, it's going to cover us. It's going to cover the kids. We're going to be fine. And there's just a lot of peace of mind at that, hey, if I happen to pass away or the worst happened, that my family is taken care of. And so have a look into it. Be wary of anything that comes with a salesperson. Remember, anything that comes with a person or a salesperson, yes, it's good sometimes to get knowledge and advice, but you actually are paying a fee for that as well. So have a look online and at term life insurance. Medical insurance. What is medical insurance? Well, medical insurance is insurance to cover the gap between the government's health insurance, the public health insurance, and hospital fees that you may have. And oftentimes for a longer stay in hospital, it can be very expensive. Maybe it can be $50 or $100 per day, something like $3,000 a month, depending on what city, what country you're living in. And so medical insurance is going to cover that gap because that gap is not covered by public health insurance in most cases. So the cost to medical insurance is approximately $20 per month for up to $100 of coverage per day if you happen to get sick. It might be more expensive depending on your age. And most plans also include extra bonus payments, or they're going to give you extra money if you need extra cancer treatment or something like that, new or advanced treatments. And so this is relatively inexpensive. Yes, you may not use it, but if you are in hospital for an extended period of time, you would have wished you had medical insurance. In fact, when our second child, Rayma, was born, when our daughter was born, Yuki, Rayma was born in the car. That's a story in itself. And but we were fine because we had this emergency fund. We were ready for that. And in fact, it turned into a blessing. We didn't end up using it, and we were actually blessed for that situation. But also when our fourth child, Jaira, was born, the doctors told Yuki that she had to stay in hospital for a month before he was born. So Yuki was actually on bed rest in hospital for a month. And that was actually really expensive. It was about $100 a day or more that we were going to have to pay. But luckily, we had the medical insurance. And so rather than us paying that extra $3,000 bill for that time in hospital, the medical insurance covered all of that. And so there's peace of mind there. Would recommend medical insurance for sure. And the last insurance that we would recommend is long-term disability insurance. This is similar to loss of life insurance, but this is insurance to cover your loss of income in case you have an accident that prevents you from working. This is more expensive than the other insurances because it's actually a lot more common. It's more common these days that if you had a car accident or something happened to you, that you're still alive, but maybe you can't work the job that you are working in. Maybe you use your hands to do things. I don't know, you might chop your hand off or something, you can't work. Or maybe you got brain damage or brain trauma and you can't think or act in a certain way. And so this is insurance to cover, to give you money to cover your salary in case you can't work. So the approximate cost for this is about $50 for $3,000 per month salary. So it's relatively more expensive. And it is more expensive depending on your age. But once again, it's a peace of mind insurance. Maybe you're not going to insure up to your whole salary. Maybe that's going to be expensive, but you do want to have something that, hey, if I get a disability, if I get in an accident, if something happens, well, there's going to be insurance that's going to pay me a monthly salary because I can't work if that happened. And so these are the three insurances: term life insurance, medical insurance, long-term disability insurance. Let's get those into action during this step. And let's also save up our beginner emergency fund of $1,000. And let's get ready for anything. And when you get these three in place, you've got a budget, and you've got your emergency fund, you've got your insurances in place, you are doing better than 90% of people in the world. Now, you're going to have to do some research. You're going to have to fill out some forms. You're going to have to look at some stuff online. You're going to have to ask some questions. There's a bit of homework to these steps, but it's going to be worth it. And the peace of mind and the sleep easy, your husband or wife is going to thank you. And if something did happen, your family and your children, of course, would also thank you. So hope this step has been helpful to you. Can't wait for our next step, session 3 next time. But I'll tell you what, have a great week. If you have any questions, remember, ask your coach or ask your Connect group leader if you've got any questions about this step. But hey, have a great week. Looking forward to hearing from you, working all of this stuff out for this step. And we'll see you next time for session 3.
Hey, welcome back, guys. I hope that you guys absorbed a bunch of this stuff about financial freedom, and so good to learn about this. But if you don't know Jesus, hey, today you can know Jesus in your life. It's the best decision you will ever make, is to invite Jesus into your life. He loves you, wants to come into your life today. And I want to just pray for you right now if you want to receive Jesus. Okay, so let's pray together. Jesus, we thank you. We believe in you today. Come into our lives. We'll follow you. Amen. Amen. If you just prayed that prayer, just a simple prayer like that, I believe God will answer your prayer. We'd love to help you out. So definitely send us a message. I'm sure there's a local pastor where you are who would love to get in touch with you and just help you walk that journey with following Jesus. Now, we actually have a bunch of these studies, all of what we're talking about tonight. We actually have Blue Book studies, so you can jump onto the Lifehouse app, and in there is the Blue Book where we use in our small groups. There's studies in there on financial freedom. I think there's 6 or 7 studies. Jump on there, check it out. You can do that with your small group. And next week we're going to be back talking about the next subject. It's going to be powerful, so make sure you tune back in next week to be part of more financial freedom. Now, if you want to give, please jump onto mylifehouse.com/give. Links are below. Choose your campus. Be a part of supporting your local campus, your local church. It's a great thing to support your local church. And we're really praying God's blessing over your life as you do that. So links are below for that. Let's be faithful and give and build the house of God together. Have an amazing week, guys. We'll see you back here next week.